The first thing Michael felt wasn't embarrassment. It was anger, sharp, humiliating anger that burned up his throat as he stood in the middle of a crowded restaurant in downtown Columbus, Ohio, realizing he had been set up like a punchline. His co-workers had insisted he get back out there. They told him he deserved to laugh again, to feel something besides exhaustion and grief. They said it would be good for him. A blind date, they promised, nothing serious. Just a little fun. What they hadn't told him was that they described him to her as a wealthy widower desperate for romance, and described her to him as some wild, carefree party girl who would shake the sadness out of him. He had almost walked out the moment he saw her sitting by the window. Sarah. She was wearing a burgundy dress and sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded nervously in her lap as she scanned the room. The late evening sun slanted across her face, soft and uncertain. For a split second, Michael thought they had truly crossed a line. Was this the joke? Pair the single dad with the woman in the wheelchair and watch the awkwardness unfold? If you were in his place, already worn thin by loss, by sleepless nights, by raising a 6-year-old alone, would you have stayed? Or would you have walked out before your pride shattered any further? Michael almost did. He had buried his wife, Rachel, 3 years earlier after a drunk driver ran a red light on a rainy April night. Since then, his world had been narrowed to soccer practices, packing lunches, and quiet evenings folding laundry while his son Noah slept with the hallway light on. Love felt like something from another lifetime. Something dangerous. He approached the table stiffly, jaw tight, expecting bitterness or sarcasm from her too. But Sarah looked up with wide, anxious eyes and something else hurt. Real hurt. As if she, too, understood she was part of some cruel misunderstanding. They both sat in silence for a moment, the weight of it thick. Michael noticed the faint tremor in her fingers resting on the armrest. Not weakness, nerves. It didn't take long for the truth to unravel. She hadn't known it was a joke either. Her sister had told her he was kind, thoughtful, that he volunteered at his church and worked in finance, that he had lost his wife and needed someone gentle. Sarah had hesitated, unsure if she was ready to date after everything she had been through. But she agreed, hoping just maybe that someone could see past the chair. The chair. It had been there for 2 years now. A spinal cord injury from a winter pileup on I-71. A distracted driver. Another careless second that changed everything. Before that, she had been a physical therapist, always on her feet, helping others walk again. The irony had almost crushed her. As she told him this, her voice stayed steady, but her eyes betrayed the cracks underneath. She wasn't asking for pity. She was stating facts. Brutal, unchangeable facts. Michael felt something shift inside him. The anger he had walked in with dissolved into something heavier. Recognition. They weren't the punchline. They were the survivors of someone else's recklessness. She admitted she almost cancelled. That she was tired of being someone's inspirational story or someone's burden. That sometimes, in the quiet of her apartment in Cleveland, she wondered if this was all her life would be now, watching from the sidelines while everyone else moved forward. Have you ever felt that? Like the world kept spinning and you were stuck in place, waving at it as it passed you by. Michael had. He told her about Noah. About how his son still asked if heaven had playgrounds. About the nights he sat on the edge of his bed, pretending to be strong, while grief sat like a stone in his chest. He confessed that he hadn't been on a date since Rachel's funeral. That even sitting there felt like betrayal. Sarah didn't flinch. She simply listened. The restaurant noise faded into a blur as they spoke. The clinking glasses, the laughter from nearby tables, it all felt distant. What remained was two people carefully peeling back the layers of survival. At one point, Sarah's hand slipped from the armrest as she gestured, and without thinking, Michael reached out to steady it. The contact startled them both. Her skin was warm. Real. Human. He hadn't touched another woman's hand in 3 years. Tears filled his eyes before he could stop them. Not because she was in a wheelchair. Not because of the joke. But because for the first time since Rachel died, he didn't feel alone in his brokenness. Sarah noticed, and instead of apologizing or looking away, she squeezed his hand gently. There was no awkwardness left. Only understanding. She told him something then that undid him completely. She said the night of her accident, when she realized she couldn't move her legs, she had prayed not to walk again, but to still have a life that mattered. To still be loved. She said she didn't want to just survive. She wanted to feel needed, chosen, seen. Michael's tears spilled freely now. In that small restaurant in Ohio, the single father who thought he had been the butt of a cruel joke realized he was sitting across from a woman braver than anyone he knew. The date that was supposed to be humiliating stretched into hours. They talked about faith, about fear, about how fragile everything is. He admitted he didn't know how to date as a widower. She admitted she didn't know how to trust someone not to see her as fragile. By the time the check came, neither of them wanted the night to end. When Michael helped her outside, the air was cool and sharp. He hesitated before asking if he could see her again, half expecting her to protect herself by saying no. But she smiled, soft and tired and hopeful all at once. In the weeks that followed, he drove to Cleveland every Saturday with Noah in the back seat. The first time Sarah met his son, she brought coloring books and asked him about school like she had all the time in the world. Noah, cautious at first, eventually wheeled her around the park path, proudly announcing that he was the engine. It wasn't easy. There were stares from strangers. There were moments when Michael felt overwhelmed by the logistics of it all: ramps, schedules, doctor appointments layered on top of parent-teacher conferences. There were nights Sarah cried quietly, grieving the body she used to have. But there was laughter too. Real laughter. The kind that fills up rooms that once echoed with silence. Months later, Michael would stand in his kitchen watching Sarah help Noah with homework, her wheelchair tucked beside the table, and realize something profound. The joke had become a miracle. The setup meant to embarrass him had instead introduced him to a woman whose strength redefined his idea of love. Not the easy, fairy tale kind. The kind built in hospital rooms and single-parent kitchens. The kind that understands loss and chooses hope anyway. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies blink across the yard, Michael told her he didn't believe in coincidences anymore. He believed in second chances disguised as accidents. Sarah rested her head against his shoulder, and for the first time in years, his heart didn't ache when he thought about the future. It felt possible. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something deeply personal. If you had been Michael, would you have walked away that first night? Or would you have stayed long enough to see the truth sitting in front of you? Sometimes the moments we think are humiliations are invitations. Invitations to look deeper. To choose compassion over pride. To let someone else's scars touch our own. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you to give people a second chance, or to look beyond what the world calls broken, please let me know in the comments. And if it truly touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more stories like this can reach those who need them most.